This is with the first pick, the CBS Sports NFL Draft Podcast. This is episode 100, Rick. We hit triple digits. We made it to 100, just shy of our literal 12-month anniversary. So that's something special.
Do we get a gold watch or anything, or for 100 or anything?
Debo, do we get a gold watch? What's the payout here?
I think that's episode 1000, the watch.
This pace, that'll be 10 years from now. Can you imagine this thing 10 years from now, what it's going to look like?
Oh, my God.
You'll be on oxygen. I'll be in a wheelchair.
Yeah, I'll be rolling. Just
Debo will be, he may be the lead host of the show by then. That, of course, is Rick Spielman. I am Ryan Wilson, and today we're doing something a little different here the day before Thanksgiving. Going to do a redraft of the 2023 NFL Draft, knowing everything that we know now. Can't stress that part enough for Mr. Rick Spielman. And, Rick, I don't know if you saw the details of Debo's email yesterday, but we're going to do all 256 picks, me and you, back and forth for the next 8 hours. So buckle up. Can you imagine that?
You're right. Yeah, because there's actually, Ryan, 155 days until the 2024 NFL Draft and 55 days that you are in the driver's seat. And if you picked all 254 of those picks, I would agree with you 100%.
Man, how long would that take? I'm sure there's someone out there that's doing that sort of stuff. We're actually not going to do that. We're going to do something a little less ambitious. We are going to do a redraft, but we're just going to do the first 14 picks. That felt like a good stopping point. The Steelers have the 14th pick after they traded up. So just so we're not here all day, that's how we'll roll that thing out. But I think either way, it's going to be fun. I took a little peek at Rick's picks, and I was surprised by the similarities and the differences. So we'll get to that. But first, before you go any further, Rick just talked about it on the official with the first pick countdown board. 155 days left, Rick. I keep saying it every time, and I haven't broken a record on this, but it is absolutely flying by. So I appreciate the fact that I have, 2 months, a little less than 2 months until things get real.
Yeah, and it's like building the China wall. You just do it one brick at a time as you're watching all these players. And it's just like, it seems like you'll never get through them all. But eventually you get to the end. Either you get them all done or you just throw your hands up and I'm fine. It is what it is.
And much like the Great Wall of China, I think you can see this podcast from space too. So that's also encouraging. Let me ask you quickly, at this point in the process, the area scouts are they about to get a break because the season's ending college football wise, or things are getting worse for them?
No, actually, they're probably off the road now. Most of them have wrapped up the initial fall reports. So they're all in the books. A lot of teams will do what they start cross checks. So each scout, now that he's been in his area, will get a position to cross check. So they'll be working on that probably through the next month until they get down to the All-Star games. So that'll be the next set of grades that come in. You have your original grades from the area scouts and then your regionals and your directors. Now it's the cross checks. So those will be layered in. And then eventually, once the season ends and the coaches get going, you'll have your coaches' grade-ins in there as well.
So the upside for area scouts is that at least they're at home for a little bit.
Yeah. And then a lot of times now with Zoom, we always had December meetings, try to clean up the backboard on guys that we know aren't going to probably be in our discussions going forward. So we had 3 or 4 days of backboard meetings in December to clean up the backboard and kind of get the initial board set before the All-Star games and then before we come back for the February meetings, which were pretty intense, trying to get that board set before you end up going to the combine.
All right, man. It's not a job for the faint of heart. Not just the area scouts, the whole operation, it feels like. Because, all right, one last question, then we'll get to this. So do things slow down for you as a general manager after the trade deadline and then ramp up right around now? Or is there a lull, or is everything go 100 miles an hour the whole time?
It's 100 miles an hour all the time because you're still doing your daily stuff for the roster, dealing with issues, under the football operations umbrella, if that's under your umbrella. If you're the general manager and can control all football operations, you're dealing with the day-to-day injuries, the workouts, everything like that. But in December, where it even gets a little dicey, is that the pro department's starting to put together the unrestricted free agent board.
Oh, gee, no breaks.
No breaks. So not only are you going back and forth with the draft stuff, but you're also starting to look at some of the potential free agents coming up. You're kind of putting your initial needs list going together. You're already having some initial cap meetings on potential guys you want to resign, setting your needs up going into next year's offseason. So it's actually keeps ramping up more and more the closer you get to the end of the season.
All right, Debo, one last question, I promise. Are you at this point, if you're, for example, Omar Khan and the offensive coordinator's just been fired, or Brandon Beane in Buffalo, are you talking to the coaches yet about replacements, or is that something you don't care about? They'll tell you who they want?
Let them focus on what they have to do.
Okay.
Because it's a midstream adjustment. I'm sure the scheme's not changing that much. We went through it one year when Mike Zimmer fired John DeFilippo and Pat Shurmur took over as the OC. But right now, the coach's responsibility is basically worry about what do we have to do to win this next week.
So that's at the very bottom of your worried list.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Little insight there as we get started here. By the way, if you missed it in the last episode, Rick and I talked our usual Tuesday Popper Drops from the college game. We looked at Drake May and J.J. McCarthy. Two performances that left something to be desired for different reasons, but you can check that out. We also looked at the old rookie quarterbacks from week 11. Shout out to Tommy D, the best quarterback in this rookie draft class so far, not named CJ Stroud, which is crazy to say out loud. And the rookie non-quarterbacks who, of course, stood out, ranked our top 5 guys. As always, you can check those shows out in the podcast feed. And remember, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Nominate an FBS or FCS college player who is draft eligible, underline bold, and we'll evaluate his prospects on upcoming show. By the way, quickly, I wanted to note, someone left a very nice review on Apple Podcasts. They love you, Rick. They tolerate me, but they forgot to put the player's name. So make sure you put the player's name in there because we'll evaluate it. I appreciate the 5-star review, but I don't want to leave you hanging there. And finally, if you like what we do here, tell a friend. If one of your buddies has a team that's no good and is already thinking about the 2024 NFL draft, this is absolutely a show for them. And while you're at it, hit the old thumbs up on YouTube at NFL and CBS to spread the word. All right, Rick, let's do it. Before we do that, one last thing. I mentioned on
You
Tuesday.
said this about 5 times. It's one last thing. Oh, wait. 55 days, count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're right. You get everything you need to get out while we're getting ready before we get to do this.
These questions pop up, and then I have to ask them, and then I say it's one last thing, and it's not one last thing. As my wife says to me, if you know, when your kids are little, if you threaten you're going to punish them, and you don't punish them, they're never going to believe you. So if I keep saying one last thing and it's never one last thing, at some point you're going to have an outburst like Rick just had.
I didn't have an outburst. I counted 10, and I am in the holiday spirit. There's some interesting matchups tomorrow and Friday, and look forward to this weekend.
You squeezed that. How many squeeze balls do you go through in the course of a podcast?
Oh,
look at how big that one is!
Yeah.
Oh my God, you got the industrial.
This keeps me 55 days calm and cool and collective as I always am.
Debo, have you ever seen a squeeze ball the size of a beach ball?
That's custom made for the one and only Rick right there.
Those guns, those Rick guns. The one last thing I was going to bring up, Rick, before you squeeze the life out of that industrial size squeeze ball, is that Debo has a little clip from the original OG episode 1 of With the First Pick. I think November 28th, 2022. Debo hit the button on that. Hey, welcome to episode 1 of With the First Pick, the CBS Sports NFL Draft Podcast. I'm CBS Sports draft analyst Ryan Wilson, and I'm joined by our general manager, Rick Spielman. So Rick, let me ask you, what's more exciting for you, being on the inaugural episode of With the First Pick or being the man responsible for drafting Justin Jefferson? Because I would imagine they're similar.
No, by far as being on this podcast, I prepared more for that than I did for any draft that we've done, just because I'm doing it a lot of this film evaluation on my own. But no, I'm extremely excited to be a part of this program, and hopefully me and you can give the fans out there some insight on what we see and what's coming up in the draft.
And look how far we've come, Rick.
Boy, did I read that script correct, Debo, that you sent me?
Yeah, you got rid of the hey. You didn't like the hey intro. I thought that was.
You know what? I noticed that you've aged, and I haven't over the last 100 episodes.
I actually noticed the same thing. Like you still have the same great head of hair. Your muscles are still
great. It's some little grays twinkled in there.
Oh yeah, you probably count the grays. I don't have to worry about counting the grays because they're all gone.
Yeah,
they're skin colored grays.
What happened? We used to have that. Or I shouldn't say that word.
Stupid.
No, tell my kids stupid. We don't use that word in our house.
Oh, okay. What we should have? What that wasn't stupid.
What that caricature of you with my body on it and your head on it with a head of hair? What happened to that?
Oh, I still have it.
Okay.
when
I
Cody
don't know.
Mock took over the one time the show too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I got that. In fact, it's my avatar on my Twitter picture. That me bulging through that suit jacket that apparently, according to you, is your body. So yeah, that's Crazy Town, USA. So that was almost a year ago, and I know it was after Thanksgiving because I put up the old Christmas tree. So I'll do that again to celebrate the longevity of this podcast. All right, let's get to it. 100 episodes, awesome. Thank you to Debo for here. Debo was here for only like 98, I think. He's slacking, so he owes us 2. But you and me, Rick, we did it for the duration. All right, 2023 NFL redraft picks 1 through 14, just so we're clear, and we're assuming the same trades were made that were made in actuality, and we're also assuming that we know everything right now that we know about these teams through week 11. So no secrets, Rick. The public knows it. You and I know it, and that's how we did the draft. First up, Carolina Panthers traded it from number 9 to number 1. And when it happened, I don't think we knew who the target was. I'd heard CJ, and then, of course, we heard Bryce, and went to the pro days. You're making the pick here. Who you taking?
But, what you're going to take a guy that may be the MVP of the league, and that's CJ Stroud. This was a no-brainer. If you knew what you knew now, Carolina would have definitely taken CJ Stroud. But this is kind of weird, to be honest.
Here we go.
I've never.
You
done
said
it.
you were excited about it last week.
Yeah, no. I have to say that because Debo.
okay.
Does he send you scripts or just me scripts on what to say and not say in this show?
Why is it? What's weird about it, Rick? Let's get into this.
Because you never do this in on the other side of the business, sitting in a GM chair. I mean,
you know why?
Why?
Because you said you're so busy, you don't have time to be playing games and going through what could have been and what ifs.
You know what, though, on a serious note, what we did is that we would evaluate every pick, and where we were wrong, we really honed in on a lot of things on why we missed that pick, whether it was a psychological test score, whether it was something on, that we missed in tape. But we always really tried to be very conscientious of going back and studying why we missed or where we missed. So hopefully we would prevent making the same mistake again. And sometimes you have to make mistakes, although no one wants to make mistakes. But in order to learn and grow, sometimes I always looked at the positive side of, okay, we messed that pick up. Why did we mess it up? And let's make sure that we study why we messed it up so we don't make the same mistake moving forward. All
right. Well, I'll highlight some of those players as we go through this exercise here about why perhaps we had overlooked or underlooked, to make up a word, certain players in their draft position. And the other thing I want to ask you, based on what you just said there, did you bring in, or would you have conversations with, I don't know what field this would be, maybe psychology? Because one of the issues I was wondering about is groupthink. So everyone gets together and maybe a young area scout, and you've talked about this before with Robert Porcher. You don't want to be the one going out on a limb for a guy when in your heart you think he's good or bad, and you get in the group with older guys and more experienced guys, and you just sort of go along with that. Did you bring in any sort of experts to help you try to avoid those pitfalls?
Well, what we did was went and try to identify, like I said, where did we miss or why did we miss? Was it something in the psychological testing? So I usually I gave assignments to everybody to go back and figure out what was the common theme or common thread of the miss. And then whether it was an analytics thing or whether, wherever area, was it a medical thing? Were they too did they not take that injury serious enough, or were they too serious and rejected the player because of that injury? So everybody in every department, and like I said, I had 95 people that were involved in the draft, would go back and reassess now that they knew, at least to this point, what type of player they were. And if we reassess in your area, why, and then we would get together and kind of try to come up with some kind of conclusion on why.
Well, you make me feel better. You make me feel better about what we're doing here. 95 versus 2 of us, and you have 57 side jobs, so we're hanging in there pretty good. All right, CJ Stroud. I took CJ Stroud as well. I can't imagine living on a planet where you know everything you know now, and you don't take CJ Stroud. Rick forgot to pay his electricity bill. His light. Oh, there it is. They just got
back on.
You're back on. You went dark there for a second. Living on the old island there. All right, CJ Stroud, first overall pick, Carolina Panthers. The follow-up question, of course, this team is truly terrible offensively now. How many more wins does CJ get you with everything else staying the same?
No, he's going the way he's playing, and it was an example of last week when he didn't have his greatest game. They have a pretty complete football team, probably a more complete football team than what we originally thought. Their defense came through for them.
Yeah.
So they're showing signs that CJ, when the game's on the line, he's shown and proven that he can come through and win games on those last second, or I would say last drives of a game. But now if he's off, they have enough and a much better football team than I think anyone anticipated on being able to win games other ways.
So my question was, how many more wins does Carolina have if CJ's there?
Oh, I'm sorry. 3.
Yeah. I mean, it's more, but not a lot more, I don't think, because it's a huge ask. And CJ's playing great, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But, all right. We'll have to visit that alternate universe and figure out what the actual record is at another time. Next up, Houston Texans at number 2. You said throughout the process you cannot come out of this draft if you're the Houston Texans without a quarterback. The original pick, of course, was CJ Stroud. And you have them taking, Rick?
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young. Now, I can hear people hemming and hawing already through their listening devices, whether they're in the car or walking down the street with their AirPods in. Because Bryce has struggled this year. If you've looked at the stats, he struggled at times if you watch the tape. But other times he's done some things that you feel good about, and there's some mitigating factors as to why he's struggling. I had them taking Debo's guy because Debo did send me a threatening letter, Jalen Carter.
Huh?
I love the idea of Jalen Carter here because he'll probably be a Pro Bowler. He might, I don't know if he'll be an All-Pro if he's played enough. But either way, I have Jalen Carter here with the understanding that I know I'm trading back up to number 3. I could have taken the quarterback here if I wanted to. But all right, tell me on Bryce at number 2 as opposed to Anthony Richardson, who played well before he got hurt. Will Levis, whatever, if you want to throw him in there. But why Bryce?
Well, we talked about it. Anthony Richardson, there's no question about the arm talent and athleticism and the best athlete at the position this year coming out. But only the 14 starts, you didn't know what you're going to get with him. He was going to take time to develop. Where Bryce, there was a pretty good history of what you were going to get. And so you knew, just like Carolina, Houston had to have a quarterback. They weren't going to go with Mims again. And that was with a new regime coming in as far as head coach, new offensive coordinator. They had to come out of here with a quarterback. So back what we knew then, that Bryce Young would have been a no-brainer. And I think he would have a lot more success with the Texans with the weapons around him. And we didn't know Tank Dell was going to be Tank Dell, but he's done a phenomenal job. Noah Brown has done a phenomenal job. So, the Schultz has really came to life, the tight end that they signed out of Dallas. So they have Nico Collins. They have more playmakers on the offensive side of the ball that were hidden maybe last year with Mims as a quarterback. But you see, when you get a quarterback like CJ Stroud in there, look how much better it made all those skill guys. So I'm assuming that if Bryce Young had the ability to work with the skill guys that Houston Texans have accumulated, that he would have much more success than he was having in that he's having in Carolina. And I can understand Carter. Carter was, without the incident last year before the draft, which happened during the combine, that he was the best non-quarterback football player in this draft. So I just made sure that I got the quarterback, and then I could understand why you would have taken Carter maybe at number 3, but I didn't go with Carter at number 3.
Yeah, this is getting interesting here. And by the way, Will Anderson has been playing out of his mind, and he didn't have the sacks early, but he did have the pressures, and people were like, well, Will's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He was doing what he's supposed to be doing, and now the stats are catching up to the production we've seen when we watched him play. But Jalen Carter is on a different planet when he's locked in, and he's been straight and narrow in Philadelphia, and he's playing at an extremely high level. I understand your theory for Bryce Young, and it makes a ton of sense. And it's why my quarterback in Houston is going to be a little different. But your pick at number 3 for the Houston Texans, they originally took Will Anderson Jr., having a great season. Certainly you did something different here. What'd you do, Rick?
I didn't do anything different. I took Will Anderson Jr.
You took Will Anderson Jr. No Jalen Carter for you here. How? Explain that. Let's start there.
I just thought that I made the connection with the damn head coach at D'Amico Ryans.
Nico, yeah.
Yeah, that the Alabama connection. They needed edge rush, and I thought he was the best edge rusher coming out by far in last year's draft. And so I went with the edge rusher because I needed to get a pass rusher.
I mean, it's worked. Let's be honest.
And he was a solid kid, solid off the field.
Yeah.
It was almost a no-brainer.
Okay. No, I get it. And I'm not going to push back too angrily on that. But I'm going to use your same theory for why Bryce would have success in Houston and take another quarterback by the name of Anthony Richardson. Given how good Bobby Sloak has been as a first-year play caller and all the ways, and CJ obviously has a lot to do with that, but all the way he's schemed guys open, he's made things, again, credit goes to CJ, don't misunderstand, but when you watch Bryce and you watch CJ, it feels like CJ has no trouble finding the open receiver, and Bryce has no chance of finding an open receiver. And I think that can extend to Anthony Richardson, who is miles behind CJ and Bryce in terms of experience because he just didn't play a ton, but somehow miles ahead athletically and what he can do with his arm and his legs. And I liked what I saw before he got hurt in Indianapolis. And just assuming he would be healthy here, playing in this offense, I think it could be electric. Now, he's not going to play like CJ because CJ's special, but CJ's already gone. So that's why I went with Anthony Richardson over Bryce Young, because of his upside and because of how good a job Bobby Sloak has done. What do you think about that?
I can understand that. I just didn't think that and I still think he has accuracy issues.
Yeah, no, he does. You're right.
Oh, and I thought Bryce Young would have been more accurate as a thrower, especially with the weapons around there. To me, Anthony is a one-read guy. If it's not there, then he's going to try to run. So I don't know if he would have had the same production. I think Bryce would have been a little bit more patient staying in the pocket because he would have a little more time to do that. And I think that he would have been a better pure thrower than Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson was just, fantastic because of the athleticism, but he can't stay healthy.
Yeah, oddly enough. The biggest quarterback struggles to stay healthy while the tiny guy takes a ton of hits and, knock on wood, continues to go out there. All right, going to take a quick break there. And after we come back, we'll hit the Colts pick. What do they do with the 4th overall pick in this redraft right after this?
We can't wait for Thanksgiving Day in Dallas when the Commanders take on the Cowboys. Thanksgiving Day, the NFL is on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right. It's the old 2023 NFL redraft on the With the First Pick podcast. Quickly, just to keep you refreshed here, Panthers took CJ for Rick and me. Houston took Bryce for Rick, Jalen Carter for me, and then Houston again took Will Anderson for Rick and Anthony Richardson for me. You can see it if you're watching on YouTube. If you are listening, you can't see anything. That's why I read it to you. All right, number 4, Indianapolis Colts are on the clock. Rick, the original pick was Anthony Richardson. Who are you taking?
Anthony Richardson. That's a no-brainer because the Colts weren't going to come out of this draft without a quarterback either. So he was the 3rd quarterback on our board. And teaming him up with the new head coach, Shane Steichen, did a great job with him while he was healthy. I envision him in Indy's offense, similar to the jump that Jalen Hurts did when he was the OC in Philadelphia. Saw a lot of similarities, except this guy is probably even a better athlete than Jalen Hurts. Mm-hmm. So to me, this was a no-brainer pick.
Okay, I took a similar thought process with this, but the quarterback that I drafted isn't clearly the athlete. And I do wonder, Shane Steichen's very good at his job, and you can find ways to get the most out of Bryce Young, who I had going to the Colts there at 4. But you can't have him running like you have Jalen running and the way you have Anthony Richardson running. And you may not be able to have Anthony Richardson running like Jalen because he continues to get banged up and he's done for the season after the first month or so. But I think Bryce would have a ton of success in this offense. And you might say, well, the receivers struggle to get open sometimes for Indianapolis. They're not as slow as the Carolina receivers. You have Pittman on the outside who can make plays down the field. You have Alex Pierce who needs to play better, and he probably struggles the most in terms of separation. But you have Josh Downs as well in the slot, who we've talked about at times in the rookie top 5 recap shows on Tuesday. So I think they're opportunities to move the ball. And then you have Jonathan Taylor, who, when he's back, it certainly
and Zach Moss, both of those guys,
and Zach Moss.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a better situation. But that said, it'd be hard pressed to find a worse situation to put Bryce in than where he currently finds himself. So anyway, Bryce Young, Indianapolis Colts. You had Anthony Richardson there. So not a lot of differences here so far. You have Jalen Carter. I had Jalen Carter. You had Will Anderson. So we have to figure out where we end up taking those guys. Next up, the Seattle Seahawks. Rick, part of me thinks that you did this homework late and you just took the same players again and again.
No, I didn't. Actually did it last week and then forgot to send in my homework assignment.
Rick, make sure you have your squeeze ball for this one for Ryan.
Oh, is Rick fired up about this one? All right, the Seahawks on the clock, Rick, and they had 2 first-round picks in the original draft. We're not going to get to the second one, which was Jackson Smith and Jigba, because that came in pick 20. We're only doing 14 here. But they took Devin Witherspoon, the cornerback out of Illinois, who's having a fantastic season at number 5 overall. Who do you have them taking?
I went back and forth on this one between Carter and Witherspoon, and I think they're both up for potential defensive rookie of the year. But Witherspoon was just too good of a player and coming out of Illinois. So I went with Witherspoon. I kept with the same pick. And I think he's a dynamic playmaker on the defensive side of the ball. He's a tone setter on the defensive side of the ball. He brings back that Legion of Boom type mentality with the way he hits. And now you have 2 corners with Wilson and Witherspoon.
Yeah, Tariq Woolen last year ran in the 4.2s. That's 6 interception. And then Devin Witherspoon, who, as you note, has a very good chance to be defensive rookie of the year. And it would be very easy to pencil him in here, but I got a little crazy, Rick. I wanted to give Eugene Cyril Smith III another weapon. Jackson Smith and Jigba was coming on a little bit. He struggled at times with consistency. He had some focus drops. We've talked about that previously on the podcast this fall. But you have Tyler Lockett. You have, of course, DK Metcalf. And I said, let's get him Zay Flowers. And what is your issue with Zay Flowers at 5?
No issue with Zay Flowers, but they didn't address the need. They had a much bigger need at corner than they had at receiver. And
well, here's my thinking. The wide receivers are probably going to.
Sorry, I'll take that side back.
Oh, but until you hear my thought process.
No, I would still sigh, but I can't sigh for 55 more days.
Oh, I see. I love that you have to self-talk yourself into not to holding back your truth.
Debo, should we have done this when I'm allowed 55 days from now to give expressions over the air?
We can do it
Rick,
again.
I'm curious. A little spoiler here, but you do not have Zay in the top 14. Do you think he could have been there if the Seahawks were still picking at 20, where they originally took
Yes, I do.
JSN?
Yes, I do.
Knowing what we know now?
Yes, I do.
Oh, Rick. My thinking was that he wouldn't be there. And my other thinking was that there's some corners that are playing pretty well. Like Joey Porter Jr., you could circle back at 20, maybe get him there. And that you may be pushing it too, by the way. Now, Joey Porter Jr. isn't having the season Devin Witherspoon is, but he's playing better than I think we thought he would. And that was my thought process. And Zay Flowers gives you one more weapon down the field for Eugene Cyril Smith III. So you don't love it.
No, I don't love it.
Okay.
I think it's too rich for a receiver that early. That's a slot receiver.
He can play outside. You
That's
say these
good.
little guys can play.
He's a good player. I'm not arguing he's not a good player. He's a really good player, but it doesn't fill a need, and you have many more other opportunities to get receivers before you can get the corner.
All right. We have our first disagreement. Pick 5. So, I would say we'll revisit at the end of the season, but Devin Witherspoon, the guy's playing out of his mind. It's not like I'm going to win this conversation. I just wanted to mix it up and give Gino a little help there. What I'm hearing is that Rick hates Gino, but that's okay. All right. Devin Witherspoon, you can't go wrong there. I don't want to besmirch the man's good name because he is playing great. And Zay Flowers to pick it up until JSN finds his form. All right, number 6, the Arizona Cardinals. Oh, they originally took Paris Johnson Jr., who's played at right tackle, and I think he's held his own. He's done pretty well under some trying circumstances. You soured on him over the recent.
He's okay. He'll be a solid starter down. He's still struggling at most rookie offensive linemen do. But
you turned on him. We liked him early on, like back in September, October. When
you got to go back and listened to the podcast.
Me or you?
Well, I wasn't as high on him as you were.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, you could be
But
right.
I did like him. I do like some of the flashes that I've seen in him.
Yeah, you were extremely high on him when you saw him work out at the pro day. There's no disputing that. But I get it. But I'm okay. I think Paris is holding his own. I feel good about it. But the point is, neither you nor I took Paris Johnson Jr. here.
Well, go ahead. If you feel that good, you should have kept to your stick.
Well, there was a better player on the board that I wanted, and you took who? Tell me who you took.
Jalen Carter. I can't believe he's still sitting here.
So you think there's a planet where Jalen Carter is still on the board at 6, knowing all we know now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep, I do. And like I said, we've already talked about him. He's been what you saw on tape. He fell for me here just because of the off field. Sometimes a leopard changes his spots, but not very often. So hopefully this kid does. But I like the way he's playing, and he's been a dominant force and at a position that's really, really hard to find. So,
have you ever seen anyone at any position, at any size, at any level, almost catch and intercept a spike? Do you see that?
Yeah, that was crazy.
What?
If he was a better athlete, he would have made that.
What planet is this where someone who weighs 315 pounds almost pulled that would have been the best play in NFL history?
Yeah, that would have been something. It would have been on some highlight reels.
Speaking of great athletes, the player I took was also on the defensive side of the ball, also still available, Will Anderson Jr.
Oh, okay.
What does that mean?
I'm not arguing with that. I love Will Anderson Jr.
Oh, why'd you say it like that?
You can't go wrong with either one of those guys. It makes Arizona better.
Absolutely. And they can come circle back and get the offensive tackle later if they want. Maybe Paris Johnson Jr. Is available later in the first round if they trade up, yada, yada, yada. All right, pick 7. Here we go. Tyree Wilson. Foot injury last November. It's been a year ago now. You contended the last time we talked about Tyree last month that he should be fully healthy from that. This is more probably above the neck sort of situation in terms of his lack of production.
That and technique and not playing with the same quick twitch that we saw coming out of college for whatever reason. And looks like he's playing by the numbers instead of just pinning his ears back and going.
Yeah. Well, the guy I thought about the player you ended up taking, Byron Young out of Tennessee.
Can I announce my picks, or are you going to do it for me? Do you want me to just sit here and listen to you?
Well, I wanted to get his name because you and Debo always call him Brian, and his name's Byron. So I want to make sure I got his name right. So it's Byron Young.
Debo, did I send it in correctly?
I don't think so.
So Byron Young out of Tennessee, not to be confused with Byron Young out of Alabama, who's an interior defensive lineman.
You're right. I did not.
Did you get it right or wrong?
Wrong.
Oh, okay. See, I was trying to save you, and you were too busy giving me the business.
I wasn't giving you the business. I was giving you a compliment.
Oh, thank you. But let me just set you up with this, because I looked it up, because I was also considering Byron Young in my top 14. He leads all rookies in sacks with 5. He leads all rookies in hits with 15. He's second in pressures with 33. And his pressure rate, the number of times he gets to the quarterback per snap, is 13%. So he's having a great start to his career for the Rams. Go ahead.
Yeah, great. He was undersized, but he was a going Jesse coming out of Tennessee. And I think the age a little bit was a factor and maybe why he slipped as well. But if you imagine him and Max Crosby coming off the edge together, they would make a pretty good pair of pass rushers for a long time with the Las Vegas Raiders, with both those guys complementing each other.
So when you're doing the self-scouting about why you missed on Tyree Wilson, for example, and you didn't see Byron Young, would the age be the primary factor, you think, or is there something else?
I think you'd go back and look at the injury history. I think you look at, were we too hard on him because of his age, and because wasn't he the one that was packing groceries before?
Yeah, that's right.
So he probably underestimated this kid's chip on his shoulder, if you want to say it that way, that he was not. Sometimes you have to look, and when a kid comes through the background, he really wants to make sure that he doesn't go back to packing groceries again, or wherever he was working, and probably exceeded expectations. And to be honest with you, he is a good athlete, but he's undersized, but exceeded what a lot of people thought he was going to be able to do at the next level.
Yeah, the Rams,
because of his heart.
Right. We didn't know if the Rams could draft people because they didn't have an opportunity to, but with less need, they've done a really good job of finding guys that are plugging and playing that are not first-round picks. So credit to them for that. So Byron Young, that's a good pick. I gave consideration to getting Byron into this top 14. I went in a, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired direction. I'm going to roll the dice on this guy. I drafted quarterback Will Levis. Never should have signed Jimmy Garoppolo. Aiden O'Connell he's probably going to be a backup. That's probably going to be his role at the NFL level. I like glimpses of what I've seen from Will Levis, and this is just a roll of the dice. Please, baby Jesus, let this work out. How do you feel about Will Levis going to the Raiders?
Do I have to really comment on that?
You can be honest. I want to get your actual thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely a disaster of a pick.
Look, we were talking about him as a first-round pick throughout the process until the end there. So,
High.
huh?
Way too high for him.
Well, I mean, he can throw deep balls to Devontae.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I look, it's a pick. It's a pick that you make when you're under duress, and usually those picks don't work out. But I'm trying to win the lottery ticket here.
Redrafting this redraft thing we're doing here.
Going to redraft the redraft. He gives you the best chance to make the biggest improvements the quickest if he hits. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
You disagree?
Totally.
I get it. All right.
You and Pete can go in your little corner and wave your Will Levis flags. I'm just not a big fan.
I get it. And I haven't been actually driving the Will Levis bandwagon. Will Will Levis go in the first round for you think, in the redraft?
Maybe later.
Okay. He hasn't played that poorly. We've talked about it. I mean, you've admitted that he's done some things. I know you get worried about the turnover-worthy plays, but all right. I won't show this to our buddy Pete Prisco. He will be very angry about this. All right. Next up, the Atlanta Falcons at number 8. They originally took Bijan Robinson, and Bijan got a ton of work early, and then Arthur Smith, for some reason, decided to play him less, and he's been back on the field a little bit and not quite as productive, but still doing a pretty good job here. Rick, who are you taking?
Wait, I'm still getting over the Will Levis pick.
Take a drink. Oh, what's in that thermos there you got?
Oh, well, it was water, but I may be changing it here if we have to go through any more of these picks of yours.
Some Michelob Ultras.
On ice.
On ice. Don't forget the ice part. All right. Yeah. Bijan went to Atlanta. Who are you taking?
Bijan. That's a no-brainer. Is
it a no-brainer because he hasn't?
It's not his fault that they're not giving him the damn ball. But when they give him the ball, he's pretty special. How can you not have this kid on your roster? And he's more than a running back because he can make plays in all the different phases, and he's not just a running back. And
no, that's right.
His fault that, he had 18 touchdowns that led the conference last year, and yet they refuse to give him the ball. And the one time they give him the ball at the 5-yard line, he scores. So it's beyond me why they don't ride this horse.
Rick, might I remind you, we have 155 days until the NFL draft and 55 days.
I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at myself.
The funny thing is I can envision you yelling this from the GM suite when your team's not running the ball enough.
No.
Give the ball to Bijan. All right.
Hard.
What's that?
It shouldn't be that hard.
It's not that hard. It's sometimes you overcomplicate it. I don't hate that pick, of course. Bijan's had a really good season when they've allowed him to play football. I went with the player that didn't go earlier to the Seahawks, Devin Witherspoon. I love the idea of AJ Terrell opposite Devin Witherspoon, and I think it's not a stretch to say he makes that defense a lot better out there.
No, you're very fortunate that he was there.
I know. Yeah.
So that's a no-brainer.
He wouldn't be there. He wouldn't be there at 8 probably, but
no. But this little fantasy land redraft thing we're doing. If you want to cook your board the way you're cooking it, that's fine.
Debo, I think things are taking a turn. He is fired up. All right, next up, the Eagles are on the board. They got Jalen Carter. They cooked the board to get Jalen Carter. In retrospect, how did that happen? We know it's the off-field stuff there. And here's where things start to come together. Look at this, Rick. As angry as you are over these first 8 picks, we're going to have some symmetry here, some kumbaya moments with the picks here. So Jalen Carter, original pick, Rick's redraft pick. Who you got going to the Eagles?
Well, I was going to, just for Debo's sake, take Puka.
That would have been great. That'd have been
just to
fantastic.
make Devo or mad. And then I said, well, we have to do this for real things. So I ended up with Christian Gonzalez. Just
Which
because,
has it.
yeah, with Slay and Bradbury not playing as well as they did last year. They need a younger. They're having struggles at the nickel position. But if he's hurt, I understand he's hurt. But the way he was playing before he got hurt, he would have been a huge help and benefit to the Eagles defense.
And as it turns out, Ryan Wilson took Christian Gonzalez here for the same reasons. And I was actually thinking wide receiver, not Puka necessarily this high, but Jordan Addison crossed my mind. But then I went and double
That's
checked.
absolute insane. You would take a receiver here for Philadelphia Eagles.
You literally just said you were going to take Puka.
I was being facetious.
Oh, I see. I was thinking about it, Rick, but the reason I didn't, because even though they only have quote unquote 2 receivers, those 2 receivers are 2 of the best players on the planet Earth, and they get them the ball, unlike Atlanta and Bijan, as you noted earlier. So I gave it some consideration, and then had to go Christian Gonzalez here. Let me ask you about Christian Gonzalez in terms of the redraft. When you go back and figure out why, although was he your cornerback 1 or was Devin?
No, Devin was. He was 2.
Okay. But you had Christian as a top 15 pick, so it's not a stretch.
Yeah, he was. We liked him coming out. We both.
Yeah. Okay. So the fact that he slipped was more of a surprise, I think, to us than.
No, yeah, it's not as much a surprise. It's the when teams start taking, if they have guys like we mentioned that are on the board equally, they'll take the need over the player. So
Gotcha.
Some boards may have had Christian Gonzalez equal with some of the other guys that went ahead of him, and if that team didn't have a need at corner, then they would have went with that other player that they felt had equal ability to Christian Gonzalez.
Christian Gonzalez, I think, ended up going 16 because the Patriots traded down 2 spots. They were originally at 14 to allow the Steelers to move up to get Broderick Jones. Let me ask you this before we take a break. In retrospect, should the Patriots have stayed put and taken Broderick Jones?
No, I think they hit it out of the park with Gonzalez. I think he's going to be a shutdown corner in this league.
I agree with that part of it, but their offensive line is woefully terrible.
Yeah, but he is not as good as Gonzalez.
Okay. No, that's fair. I just wanted to double check on that. All right.
He was pick 17, a pick after Forbes.
Oh, 17. Sorry. Thank you, Debo.
So not even the second corner off the board.
No.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Manny Forbes is having a deal, too. All right. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll hit picks 10 through 14 right after this.
The Scudetto, where the soul of Italy meets the pinnacle of calcio. Catch Serie A on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount Plus.
Rick, if you were angry about the prospects of me taking Jordan Addison at number 9 to the Eagles, you were going to be absolutely irate. You better get out the pumpkin-sized squeeze ball for this one, because you're going to blow a gasket, my friend.
Balls. This is when you do a good pick. This is when you do a really, really questionable pick.
You got the sun and the moon in your hands there.
On this one?
Well, you tell me. We'll figure it out. So originally they took Darnell Wright, the right tackle out of Tennessee. And do you think he's played better than Paris? I got the sense you didn't.
No.
I think he's played okay. I think he's played better than okay, above average. And the funny thing is, I had to do the grades. We did the grades on the show for the rookies and the first rounders. And I think C+ is where Darnell came out. And I wrote that up for CBSSports.com. And Rick, when I tell you the Bears fans were quite angry at the C+ grade that I gave Darnell Wright, it was that's an understatement. They were extremely fired up. They kept going back to Max Crosby. I think he's played pretty well.
He
that
can't
said,
pass protect. He's a good run blocker, but he struggles in pass protection.
All right. People who are angry at me, please direct your ire towards Mr. Spielman when talking about Darnell Wright. So they took Darnell. He started, I think, every game, unless I missed something. Who do you have them taking in the redraft, Rick?
I went with Jordan Addison.
Do they need another receiver? They drafted Tyler Scott in the 3rd round.
Who else do they have besides?
They have Darnell.
Yeah, okay. Mooney hasn't been doing anything this year. He's been quiet. So
and they have CJ.
CJ is their only legit receiving threat on that roster.
Curtis Samuel, I should say, yeah.
So I think that this gave them another offensive weapon for Justin Fields. You have to figure out what Justin Fields is. St. Brown, the other St. Brown is just a guy. Mooney's been just a guy. So I gave them another offensive weapon. DJ Moore's been outstanding for him. Maybe the best part of that whole trade was getting DJ Moore in a Chicago Bears uniform. But to add another playmaker, you see a lot of these teams that have success on the offense always have two guys. And I thought Addison would have been a good addition, an offensive weapon, because we talked about it all offseason. Get some playmakers around Justin Fields so you can figure out who he is or what he is. And I thought by getting a Jordan Addison, that would have done that.
Yes, DJ Moore. Thank you. I called him CJ and Curtis Samuel for some reason.
Yeah, but that's fine.
You got me flustered. We're at the point in the show where you're actually correcting me on the names, which is not a state we want to be in.
Bad deal. We are at the rock bottom now, bud.
So DJ Moore, they moved on from Chase Claypool. That was a disaster from Jump Street. Cole Kmet, the tight end, has done some things, but I get it. I don't have any issue with the pick, and I think Jordan Addison would certainly come in and help right away and probably be wide receiver 1, right?
I don't know. Him and DJ would have been a nice combination because it gives them speed that they don't have. And Mooney's fast. He's just not what he was 2 years ago.
And Justin
I
Fields,
don't know if that's the scheme or if that's a quarterback, but he's a shell of himself, in my opinion.
And Justin Fields played well in his first game back. That was fun to see. So hopefully he can continue that. And then the Bears.
And he had 120 quarterback rating before he injured the 3 games before he injured his thumb.
Good. So then you're going to have some conversations about what to do with that pick.
Podcast. That's for another podcast.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about their front office that they got to sort some things out. All right. We can go through this quickly, Rick, so you don't destroy your chair and go Hulk on us. I'm taking Darnell Wright. You need offensive line help. I think he's played better than you think he's played. And if you don't have a right tackle, get right back to where you started. Tevin Jenkins came back. He looked pretty good. You have Braxton Jones, who they like on the left side. You're building some things. Cody Whitehair in the middle.
I respect that.
So Paris Johnson Jr. still on the board. Would you rather have taken him?
Yes.
Okay.
Better athlete.
He is a better athlete. I think they played close, and I wanted to give a nod to Bears fans so they'd leave me alone.
Yeah, I don't know if Darnell Wright was the one that gave up the sack against the Detroit Lions last week when Hutchinson came bolting through him.
Yeah. Hutchinson's pretty good.
Yeah, well, they got to block dudes like that.
That's
and I
true.
think Darnell Wright, I'm not down on. I think he's going to be a solid right tackle in the league. He just has issues with his athleticism in pass protection. But
I get it.
Dominant run blocker.
So that would tell me to run the ball more, but I'm not an offensive coordinator. What do I know? All right. Darnell Wright, hats off to you. Rick Spielman that doesn't think you should go there. Jordan Addison pick, I like that too. All right, pick number 11. The Titans are on the board. They originally took Peter Skoronski, who, when healthy, is played pretty well. Wasn't quite as effective after the appendectomy that happened, I think, in week 2, came back a few weeks later. But he's a good player, plays left guard, and he's one of the few bright spots on that offense. Tyjae Spears is having a pretty good season at running back, and we know about Will Levis, but there are a few other things worth mentioning. They need help everywhere. So let's see here, Rick. Oh, interesting. We took guys who
into that thing.
We took guys on the physical spectrum that are exact opposite ends. So who do you got?
I took DeJuan Jones, which has been a pleasant surprise for me.
Very pleasant. All right.
He's been excellent as a run blocker. He's so massive. It's hard to get around in pass protection. They have issues at both tackle spots. And I like Skoronski. I think he was a solid pick, and I would have kept it the same, but I wanted to shake it up here a little bit. And I went with the bigger need at right tackle, and DeJuan Jones has played very well for the Cleveland Browns. And when Conklin went down, he got his opportunity, and he's been the best right tackle. He's playing better right now than your guy, Darnell Wright.
Oh, so you'd like Darnell, excuse me, obviously you'd like DeJuan better at right tackle for the Bears.
That's what we've seen to date.
Yeah, no, I get it. And that's another example of a guy, when you go back and self-scout the draft process, that's mostly off-field. Not off-field that he's a terrible kid, but off-field, like how motivated is he to be a hard worker? Is that the conversation?
Yeah, and he's answered those questions so far. Now, it may be different 2 years from now, but as of right now, he's playing like the DeJuan Jones we seen that first day at the Senior Bowl and the DeJuan Jones we seen on tape last year.
You know, the funny thing is, Rick, when we were at that pro day, you were very upset, not angry. You were upset with DeJuan for not working out. You're very high on Paris for working out and looking great. And here we are. Once you start playing football, things can change.
Yes.
So that's that.
As of now, but it's
As
not
of
the
now.
whole story.
Right.
You should
That's
do
right.
this redraft 3 years from now, and then we'll see how true this is. But
Yep.
Debo doesn't do that. We have to do it after 9 or 10 games or 11 games.
He just told me he made a note for episode 300. We're going to do the 2023 redraft. So get ready for that. All right, DeJuan Jones here. That's a great pick. And you can still get Will Levis at the top of the second if that works out. And then at least he's not getting hit every single drop back, just every other drop back. All right, I went at the other end of the physical spectrum. And hold on to your hats, Rick. Get the squeeze ball out. Tank Dell, the 11th overall pick at 5'8", 165. Your thoughts?
He's had a great year.
He has had a great year. And I think this offense is very reminiscent of the Panthers offense that no one can get open down the field. You have DeAndre Hopkins, and they schemed him open in that first game that Will Levis threw the 3 or 4 touchdowns. And then after that, you needed the trick play last week to get him open. And he's a great football player, but he's not a guy that's going to win consistently down the field. I think Tank Dell gives you that juice at all 3 levels. You can add him into the return game if you want, and just something to this offense that looks something beyond stagnant. So that's why I went with Tank Dell here. Jackson Smith and Jigba was still available. Quentin Johnson was a first-round pick. He's still available. Those guys weren't in the conversation for me. That's why I went with the wide receiver.
I would take Tank over those 2 right now as it stands right now.
And I get the offensive line help. They do need that desperately. But I said, let's just get some playmakers, and then we'll circle back and figure out the mess of the offensive line later. All right.
Well,
you didn't hate it, Debo.
I don't understand why you take a 5'6", 165-pound receiver, but in the top 12. But he's a good football player.
So he went in the 3rd round, I think.
Yes, he did.
We talked about this, though. There seems to be a movement. There was a movement towards tall receivers after Randy Moss and Megatron started doing their things. And now I think we're moving back the other way. We've seen these smallish receivers. And Tank Dell's special. You can't just put any guy out there who's short and expect him to do what Tank Dell does. But I think we're seeing
he's unique for his size.
Yeah. I know you don't like Calvin Austin Jr. as much, and Calvin Austin Jr. is not as explosive, but he's another diminutive guy they try to get into space and sort of specialty plays for the Steelers. But Tank Dell is special.
Tank Dell, the 69th pick, one of the lowest picks on the board. Rick actually had the lowest overall pick in the OG draft. 111 was DeJuan Jones.
4th round, yeah. And that's none of that's physical. All of that's motivational.
Yes, and listening to DeJuan Jones have 3 meals and then take 1 to go after he met with one team at the pro day and walked out there and just sweats. I'm sorry.
I love that story. That's a great story. Look, man, you can't say 380 by not eating 3 meals and taking 1 to go.
And don't even get on the scale, which was another thing at the pro day we were at. Didn't even get on the scale.
Got bad advice, but it's worked out. Look, here's the lesson too, by the way. Yeah, he's going in the 1st round of this redraft. The bad part is that he lost a ton of money by not doing some little things that could have helped him.
Yes, he did.
So that's the takeaway for any future draft prospects listening to us right now. All right, number 12, the Detroit Lions are on the board. They originally took Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12 after trading down a few spots. They were at number 6 originally, I believe. Here's the tease, Rick. We both have them taking players they eventually drafted, but they're 2 different players. Who do you have them taking?
I took Jahmyr. I just think he's special and talented, and that combination of him and Montgomery, to me, are one of the top, if not the top combo running backs in the league right now. And look at how many games this kid has probably helped them win from the running back position and the way he's been catching the ball. It's incredible how they use him as a receiver as well. And he's just an offensive weapon that has had a major contribution to Detroit's success on offense.
Yeah, I'm not going to push back on that. He is a special player, and unlike Atlanta, Dan Campbell has eased him to the offense, and now he's been a mainstay, especially once Montgomery got hurt. But Montgomery's back now, and now they have that 1-2 punch. And even when the rare occasion that Jared Goff struggles, and he had the 3 interceptions against the Bears, you can still lean on your specialty players, special players, not specialty, I guess I should say. And Jahmyr Gibbs is that. We talked about him on Tuesday's pod for being one of the top 5 rookie performers. I went with another draft pick, someone they took in the 2nd round, and they've crushed this draft. And Jahmyr Gibbs is the obvious choice, but I wanted to mix it up here. I went with Sam Laporta, the best rookie tight end in this class, and one of the best tight ends so far through the season, given his the way they value him and the way they target him and get him involved in the offense. And he, unlike Jahmyr Gibbs, they got him involved early, and they continue to get him involved. So do you take a tight end at 12? Not typically. Hawkinson went high. Noah Fant went, I think, in the 20s that year they came out together. But Sam Laporta is my guy at 12. How much do you love that pick?
I love all of the Lions picks.
Oh, that's good. That's the secret. I could have taken Corby Soderstall here, and you would have been happy with that.
No argument.
All right, cool. Win-win for the Lions here. And just a little tease for you, Debo. There might be another Lions original draft pick that finds its way into the top 14. We only have 2 picks to go here, so let's see. At pick 13, they took old Lucas Van Ness, who never started a game at Iowa famously, but who has flashed at times. We talked about him in the grades show for the rookie first-round picks, and I think he's going to continue to get better with experience. He hasn't played poorly. It's just that he's grown into that role, it feels like, Rick. But you and I actually have them taking the exact same player.
Really? Gosh, I thought you would never have done your research on this.
Well, this is a young man we talked to at the Combine, and I was excited to talk to him at the Combine because he had a good college season, and he's having just as good start to his NFL career. Who do we take?
Tui Peloto.
Tui Peloto. Close enough. There you go. And they're going to need him more now because Joey Bosa's hurt.
Yeah. No, he's you've seen the flashes when he came out. Thanks, Debo, for fixing that. That was throwing me off. If you're watching on YouTube, Debo doesn't know where the cap sign is or the font size. So
Rick is not thankful for this podcast, Debo. I get he is on one right now.
But no, he's been
alongside of my good friend, CBS Sports draft analyst Ryan Wilson.
And I said that with that shirt on, so you know who
You
else.
have to remind them sometimes.
You have to remind him sometimes. That's right. All right, continue with Thule.
Yeah. It was a question of where they were going to play him when he came out. You remember we talked about him as an inside rusher, outside rusher.
Yeah.
Needed to play better against the run, but he did have pass rush ability. A little bit like who's the kid coming out of UCLA this year? Latu?
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of that similar type movement, but this kid seems to be bigger. So he's been a pleasant surprise and has really been productive and disruptive as a pass rusher for the Chargers.
I agree. And he's been a lot of fun to watch, even though he's, again, sort of like Lucas Van Ness growing into that role, but they're going to need him now more than ever. But he certainly flashed alongside our guy, Byron Young, for the Rams, who Rick already took in this draft. So I'm glad we agreed on that because things are about to get crazy here. Pick 14, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They originally took Broderick Jones, the right tackle out of Georgia. They traded up to get him, or the left tackle, excuse me. He's now playing right tackle. The last handful of games he started there, and he's done pretty well. Didn't start the season on the field, but he's found his way there. At 14, I gave serious consideration to taking Joey Porter Jr. here, who they took at pick 32.
I would agree. I think he's playing well for him.
He's playing great, and that's the issue was a little stiffness, and you haven't seen a ton of that. He's incredibly handsy, and he's gotten away with a lot of it. We'll see if that continues or whether he learns not to be quite as handsy. But he's been a huge godsend for them because they needed to find another cornerback after Cam Sutton went to your Detroit Lions, is having a great season there. So again, the original pick was Broderick Jones. I actually like your pick a lot. Who'd you have him taken?
Brian Branch out of Alabama.
God, that's a good pick.
Yeah, he's been a difference maker on their defense. He can play nick. He can play safety. He's a tone setter. Very good in coverage. He just, fell because of this 40 time, which we talked about. Plays a lot faster than what he ran, but too good of a football player to pass up here. And Steelers need help in their secondary.
Mink is out right now too, so he could help in that sense. He was drafted in the second round by the Lions. He feels like a Lions player, but if he weren't a Lions player, he feels like a Steeler in terms of the way he plays and approaches the game. I went in a direction that's going to make Rick incredibly angry, but I took Paris Johnson Jr., can play left tackle, right tackle, can play guard if you need to. He played there at Ohio State, and he gives you that versatility. But the question I'll ask you, Rick, is he playing better than Broderick Jones?
I haven't seen enough of Broderick. I thought the first game Broderick started at left tackle, he was a little out of sync, reverted back to what he did from a technique standpoint at Georgia, which you can't get away with at the NFL. I thought his second start, he was much better with technique, much more at ease and not as panicky or as jittery as he was. And I think he's going to be a really good tackle in this league. Paris, the only question I have on Paris is, liked everything, played multiple positions coming out of Ohio State. How high is his ceiling compared to how high Broderick Jones's ceiling is?
Yeah, they're both incredibly athletic, and one just has a little bit more experience than the other. And I'll be honest, part of this is not a panic pick, but a huge need pick. And maybe I don't think you're overdrafting Paris Johnson Jr. at 14.
No.
But that was the thinking there, because that offensive line has been better this year, but they have to overcome a lot in terms of the play calling and the quarterback play, the play
Who would
calling.
have had a bigger impact on the Steelers according to the rules of this redraft, Branch or Johnson?
Probably Brian Branch, because they didn't start Broderick Jones beginning the season anyway. They'd roll with the guys that they had already on the roster through free agency and that had signed previously. So Brian Branch, because he's playing, if not from day one, he's playing from day 1.5. You're getting him out there, and especially now with the injuries to the secondary, they've had injuries at linebacker. And I'm not saying Brian Branch is a linebacker, but if you're playing sub packages, you get him out there and he can tackle coming downhill. I mean, he's not afraid to stick his nose in the blender.
No, who says that?
What do you call it?
Huh?
Throw his bag of bones around. What do you call it?
Yeah, throw his bag of bones in the pile.
Yeah, that. I don't know what stick your nose in the blender is. That doesn't sound.
That's stupid.
Yes, sticking one's nose in the blender is in fact stupid. I agree with that, Rick.
I have a couple questions on omissions here.
Okay, here we go.
Ryan, I'm gonna direct the first couple towards Ryan.
All right.
Bijan and Addison.
So
think
Bijan,
Bijan,
I didn't have any running backs go in this top 14. Rick, you had both go to their original destinations. I didn't know where to stick Bijan and not be, with teams that had bigger needs. I felt like, where would they go? Like, I thought that if you have a chance to get, I'll ask you this, Rick, you have a chance to get Devin Witherspoon or Bijan Robinson, who are you taking?
If I'm Seattle,
I'm sorry, if you're the Falcons,
Bijan.
over Devin Witherspoon if they're both on the board.
That would be a tough call, but I would have went with Bijan.
Okay, yeah. And
If
Jordan Addison.
Now, if they're using them the way they're using them, I would have went with Witherspoon. How do we know now? Wow.
He is fired up about that Bijan usage factor. In terms of Jordan Addison, that was another one. I mentioned that I thought about the Eagles there, and then Rick got so angry at me that I could sense I couldn't have him going that high, so I had them taking Christian Gonzalez instead. But those are all, I get it. I don't have an issue with that. And I took Tank Dell over Jordan Addison as well. What do you think about that, Rick, to the Titans at 11?
Yeah, I just think Jordan Addison has had a major impact, and you really seen him rise to the occasion, especially with JJ gone.
Yeah.
And I think he's leading all the rookie receivers in touchdown catches.
Yep.
I can understand Tank, but to me, I would have taken Jordan Addison. I think Tank's a 3. I think Addison's at least a 2 to a 1.
Yeah, I get it. Fair enough. All right, Debo, what else you got?
I got a couple more. These guys didn't make either of your boards. Just how close, I'm curious, they potentially would be. Puka, Devin Achane, and Dalton Kincaid.
Go first, Rick.
All of them. Kincaid would have been in the first round. Puka, no. And Achane, he would have been probably the next running back if another running back went in the first round after Gibbs and Bijan. But Achane has had when he's healthy, he's been a difference maker for Miami, and they are a lot more explosive on the offensive side with him in the lineup than with not. And the combination of him and Mostert is a great combination. Another really good one too. All speed though, and that fits that scheme down there. Probably the best deal that Miami didn't do was not trade for Dalvin Cook, because that would have buried Achane. And we used to call that, when you have vets in front of some of these rookies that are waiting their time, and the rookies are better or going to be better, they just need to get out there. We used to call them progress inhibitors.
Yeah. Self-inflicted progress inhibitors, right?
Yes, because a lot of coaches will want to stay with the vet who knew the system, that they don't have to coach as hard.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting angle. I know coaches by nature are conservative because they don't want to get fired, but also they don't want to coach as hard. That's interesting too.
I would say that's maybe not say coach as hard. They don't have to spend as much time on a veteran who knows the system and the technique than they may as a rookie until they can trust that rookie.
Yeah, not coach as hard, but maybe coach them as hard.
Just that it's more of a comfort level.
Yeah,
I get it. They know what he's going to do. They don't know what's going to happen with that rookie when he gets out there.
Exactly. You're not calling them lazy. They're risk averse.
No, absolutely not.
Cut that, Devo. He just called the coaches lazy. No, they're risk averse. They don't want to have to deal with mistakes.
Another better way to term that.
Oh, thank you. Look at that. So Puka, are you taking him in the second round?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Finally, something positive said about Puka Spielman 100 episodes into this show. Who were the other two that you mentioned? Oh, Devin Achane.
And then Kincaid.
I wish Achane had just stayed healthier because that would have been a fun conversation. But I still think that if he stays healthy and similar level production, is there 3 running back situation in the first round?
Yeah, but he'd be behind the 2 for me still, Bijan and Robinson and
I love that.
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Debo?
Those are the main ones. When we check in 3 years, I'm sure Nolan Smith will be in the top 14.
Yeah, Nolan's not doing. They don't need him to a whole bunch either, though. That's the other thing. I don't even would it be better if they took Puka at 31 or 32, 30, whenever that pick was?
Why did you want to give Philly a receiver is beyond me.
I just want to see that reaction. That's why.
Okay.
What is their other needs?
They needed D tackle help. They got that.
Yeah.
They needed corner help, and they needed secondary help. There were too many.
They play a ton of zone because I was actually thinking about Joey Porter Jr. there too. Do you take Joey Porter Jr. at the bottom of the first round?
Yeah.
Even though he's not a zone-ish guy?
Yeah. I would. Yeah. They have 2 older corners, and they brought them back, which was great that they got them back, but they need secondary help. Don't you think, Debo?
Yeah, I thought you guys A+ for the Gonzalez pick. I absolutely would have taken Porter if he was there at 30.
Okay. There you go. Look at that. We can all end on something positive. All right, Rick.
Thanksgiving.
After this podcast, I'm going to go on Amazon and get you a couch-sized squeeze ball so you can be better prepared to manage your emotions.
This one may be done by the time we get through this 55
Look
days.
at that thing. If you're listening to this podcast, please go to YouTube and see the size of this squeeze ball. That is absurd. Is the only. Oh my gosh, I can't even. All right, that's it, Rick. That's our episode 100.
Debo, we'll be looking for our gold watches. We'll be looking for a while.
You can get some what is paper? That's like the first.
Paper's the Airs anniversary 1 is paper. So we'll get paper watches, Rick. You can draw the Rolex on there at your leisure. So anyway, episode 100 in the books. Thanks to all you guys who have been here from the beginning. Thanks to all you guys who have joined us along the way. It's been a crazy almost 12 months. I think, Debo, would you say that year 1 has surpassed all our expectations?
Easily.
Oh, look at that, Rick.
Wow. And thank you, Ryan, for giving, and Debo for giving me the opportunity to be the supporting actor in this role. I know where my spot is, and I just appreciate everything that you do, that Ryan does to make this podcast go how it goes, and all the hard work and effort that goes into it. And I don't know how I would be able to do this podcast without the support of our star, Ryan Wilson, and our star producer, director, whoever's behind the window, Debo, whatever he does.
I didn't say
Although,
anything.
Debo, the next 100, can we just make sure that we are very clear on instructions?
There it is.
For my homework assignments.
There it is. I purposely didn't say one word during that soliloquy because I wanted to make sure Debo had ample opportunity to cut all those nice things you said so he can throw them back in your face when you start acting up. So that was perfect. I appreciate that, Rick. And thanks to all you guys legitimately who listen and watch and support us because it's been a ton of fun. So on that note, thank you as always to my guy, Rick. Thanks to Debo for producing. And thanks again to all you guys who watch, listen, and comment. And have a happy Thanksgiving. And we'll see you guys
everyone.
next Tuesday.